Hi, my name is Carly Sanders, and I am the founder slash student advisor of the Riverside Greenhouse Club. And the purpose of this club is to educate students on plant science while sustaining the greenhouse that I founded this year. So I actually came up with this idea kind of randomly. I was in class with Mrs. Ross one day, and she was giving us a scavenger hunt to do, and she told us that nothing was in the greenhouse. And I was like, wait, hold up a second, we have a greenhouse? And she's like, yeah, but it hasn't been used in like 7 years. And I was like, that's a problem, we gotta fix that. So I kind of started this before this project was even in my head. So in like September is when I actually began. But later on, I realized that I'm gonna have to need like get some help eventually because I'm graduating and I want someone to take it over next year so that other students who are interested in botany or horticulture or just like experimenting with plants are able to use it since I kind of had to make it available for myself. So basically, I want a club that's recognized at Riverside. So those students in the club will take care of the greenhouse. So I started in September, and the first obstacle that I kind of faced was the fact that it hadn't been used in 7 years. So it was dirty, it was unorganized, and it was pretty much a mess from what you can tell in the pictures. So I spent a lot of my first 2 weeks scrubbing things, getting rid of dead plants, and really just like cleaning and setting myself up so that I could plant my seeds. So I also had to do a lot of sorting and organizing because there was a bunch of like it's basically a science closet, so there's a lot of other stuff in there. So I kind of had to like set up my area to ensure my success. So my first sprouts were September 30th. So I had, as you can see, I have some bok choy here on the left, and then on the right, I have a cow and Chloe plant at the top, which is a succulent, and then some green beans, some bok choy, and some lettuce that I planted. So I kind of started small, and I didn't have a lot going on, but I felt like I was doing pretty good at the beginning. I never really had an idea of what it could turn into since it was just kind of my little thing that I was doing for fun. At the beginning of October, I had several plants. I had some green beans, some radishes, and an African violet, which you can see kind of at the top here. It really didn't need much attention because I wasn't planting anymore. I just had to water it. So I don't feel like at this point I saw it going anywhere, at least not as far as it has gone now. At the end of October, I just kind of started like planting more. It began to look more like a greenhouse from what you can see. I have some like full grown green bean plants at the top. In November, I just wanted to show the picture. I think this Christmas cactus is so pretty, but I feel like this is when I kind of started to show it off to people because I wasn't really talking about it at much, like at first, because I didn't want to like show like seem showy or like flaunt the fact that I had the opportunity to do this because this was something that Mr. Bione let me do while I was aiding for him. December is probably when some of the first problems began to arise. So winter break was obviously a problem because there wouldn't be anyone there to water the plants. So I had to come up with a system to make sure that they had enough water, which basically consisted of me pouring like an inch or two of water into these trays so that they could suck up the water. This worked for most of the plants, but when I got back in January, the peas in the middle were mostly dried out. And then there's a heater back here behind the plants, which was also a problem because it was starting to dry out some of the plant's leaves. So I kind of had to like rearrange the entire greenhouse at this point to make sure that everything was far enough away from the heater. Around January is the time where I realized that if I did not figure out something to do with the greenhouse in the future, it would pretty much just go back to being an unused closet, and I did not want that at all. So I began asking around to see if like anyone actually wanted to be involved, and like I was posting pictures and stuff like that, and just kind of talking about it more to see if I could find some way to make sure that it didn't just not like it make sure that it didn't just not exist next year. So around February is when I got serious about this. It's also when around the time where we started getting serious about our leadership project. So at first, this is not exactly what I was going to do with my leadership project. It just kind of fell into place where it worked together. So I ended up meeting with Mr. Liatzos and asking him what exactly I would have to do to create a club. So he gave me an outline of some steps that I had to do in order to make that happen. So I needed like I had to have a whole proposal. So Mr. Bione is my faculty advisor for the club. So we sat down and kind of went through this whole outline of the goals and the membership and basically how the club is going to be run, which was very actually kind of hard because it was something that I was pulling out of my head, and it wasn't really something like this club isn't something that's similar to anything else we have at the school. And the idea that it's basically like it's open to absolutely anyone. It doesn't require any skill set, and you basically do whatever you want with it. And then the month of March had some obvious issues. So at the beginning of the month, I planted some seeds that I got for Christmas from a friend. And so I had a ton of herb plants that had just popped up. And then I put them in smaller pots. So I had a ton of little pots, which then became a problem when we found out that we would have to be off of school for 3 weeks. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to go to Riverside to take care of the plants since I didn't have access to the greenhouse. So I ended up taking them home, and they lived in my bedroom for about a week, as you can see in the top right. The bottom right is me taking them home in the back of my car at 9 o'clock at night after a show. So this is the greenhouse's current home. This was a few weeks ago, so I have a few more plants since then in there. But this is at my house. My father built this for me in order for me to take care of the greenhouse, which I'm so thankful for. That was such a nice thing. We kind of worked together on it, and it was a great bonding experience. But most of the plants you see here are my own, but you kind of get the picture. I'm not quite sure which one of these plants, or if any, will be returning to Riverside in the fall to be under the care of the club. So I kind of took the opportunity when we left school to make the greenhouse virtual to try and get more exposure. So I'm glad I did that though, because now this is my main form of communication with the Riverside community. I have posted like several inspirational quotes as well as a post for Earth Day to try and lift people's spirits. And then in order to get the greenhouse approved, I had to submit that proposal to Mr. Liatzos that I was talking about earlier. And it took a while for it to happen. It had to go through several staff members, a bunch of people in the office, but now I actually have an account that I can use for next year's students. So I can take donations or I can put money into it so that when I am not there, they can kind of start fresh with everything. You can see the here. So this is basically what Mr. Bione and I worked through. You can basically see that it's just talking about what the greenhouse club is going to do and how it's going to work. You can also see one of the main things was cost. So the money will come from grants, donations, and fundraisers. So a lot of the money for the Greenhouse Club, I am planning on coming from donations or just donations of physical materials. So this is the Greenhouse Twitter. If it loads. There we go. So this is the Twitter that I've been running. It has quite a few followers considering it was started in March. But I have quite a few local greenhouses following this account, as well as many Riverside students, and a lot of parents actually too. So I feel like I have a really good foundation set in terms of making the club sustainable. I also have been able to recruit quite a few members. This flyer was sent out last week to all of the incoming 8th through 12th graders for next year. It was also posted on the Twitter, but it's gained quite a lot of, like, not a lot of interest, but a decent amount of interest. But it's mostly from people who already knew about the Greenhouse Club that I've talked to about it. But I have like about 5 or 6 members lined up for next year, which is really good considering that I ran it myself this year. But I really need one specific person to take it over. So next year for the club, I want them to start fresh with new plants and seeds and purchasing, like, that are purchased using the money that the Greenhouse Fund will now have. So there needs to be an upperclassman to assist Mr. Bioni in the club since I will not be there. I also want to be able to, for them to set a plan for an end of year plant sale, which was something that I was not able to do this year. And then through this project, I've learned several skills in organization, management, and then communicating with large groups, really. So I've also learned how to work with administration for an idea that you don't really have a lot of support behind. So obviously, like, I just started this year, so they'd seen what I've done because it was on Twitter, and I feel like I have a pretty good relationship with the administration, so I was able to talk to them about it and just kind of like show what I was doing the whole time I was doing it. So when I went to talk to them, it was still kind of something that was like, okay, like, yeah, maybe this can happen. But I really had to show them that I was passionate about this and was really going to give it a go and make sure that it was something that could be sustained if everyone else was going to be putting the work into it. And then I feel like for me, this club was very valuable for me in terms of it kind of functioned as a senior project. So in the future, I want to do botany and biochemistry. So the whole botany thing kind of like set in stone that like this is what I want to do with my future. And that wasn't the intention, but this club is also very good for me in terms of showing other people what I can do, since this was not only entrepreneurial, but it worked within my major. So when I go to do work in the future, maybe internships or something like that, I have this experience.